Welcome to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I'm your host, Deb Maisner. I'm a registered nurse, health coach, and alcohol-free badass. I have found that there's more than one way to address drinking. If you've ever asked yourself if drinking is taking more than it's giving, or if you've found that you're drinking more than usual, you may have reached your own alcohol tipping point. The Alcohol Tipping Point is a podcast for you to find tips, tools, and thoughts to change your drinking. Whether you're ready to quit forever or a week, this is the place for you. You are not stuck and you can change. Let's get started. Welcome back, and thank you for listening to this very special episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. Very special because I have my brother on the show again, and I was just reflecting after we got done recording our episode that I feel so grateful that we have these conversations to look back on one day, when we're in our 70s or our 80s, and maybe our kids will want to watch them, listen to them. It's very special and meaningful to have this kind of conversation with my brother. And I'm so grateful for him. And so very proud of him for changing his drinking, for just wanting to live a better life, for being the man that he is, the wonderful husband, dad, brother, son. And I think that you will enjoy hearing from him as well. And I want to thank you for listening to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast, which has been on the air for over 3 years now. And I want to invite you to the next Alcoholiday, which is the dry month that I run every month. I've been running Alcoholidays every month since July of 2021. Wow. This will be my third year of running Alcoholidays, and it's Dry July. What a great time to take a break from drinking. I want to invite you to the next Alcoholiday. You can go to alcoholtippingpoint.com/alcoholiday. As a podcast listener, you always get 20% off by using the code LOVE, LOVE. And if you happen to have done one before, email me because I love to help support you, and I have a super big discount for alumni of Alcoholidays. I think that it takes a while to unwind this habit. And I just want to keep offering these Alcoholidays as long as people are finding them useful. I want to keep having this kind of space for you to practice not drinking. I want it to be in a non-judgmental, shame-free space where you get some tools, resources, and some compassion as you are making this big change in your life. Whether you're just doing a dry July or you know that you're done with alcohol, but you're having some difficulty breaking up with it. And maybe you are already done with drinking, but you're looking for a little more support. And so then the Alcoholiday can be for you as well. Anyway, I will definitely link that to the show notes. And again, you can go to my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com/alcoholiday. I would love to see you and help support you in Dry July. In the meantime, listen to this special episode with my brother. Well, Chris, welcome back to the podcast. You're my first three-peater, the first person who's come on 3 times. Did you know that?
I did not. Actually, no, I knew this was my third time, but I didn't realize this is the first guest that you have, me being the third time.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. So you're back on so we could talk about you celebrating 3 years alcohol free, which actually was in April. And when I listened to your first podcast episode, it was, I think we decided on 4/4, April 4th. But it's interesting because you don't even have a date in mind, do you?
I don't. I don't even wear a watch. I mean, calendar. I'm aware of deadlines, but good golly, the Smalley. Yeah, it was around Easter. And of course, Easter is on the moon, so it changes. And so I just say, yeah, I just kind of do. I measure by tax seasons.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, I just wanna, like, congratulate you and high five you on 3 years because I think that's awesome, and I'm so proud of you for that.
Thank you. It's good that we can celebrate each other.
Oh, I know, totally. Well, I had come up with some questions, and I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about, and I guess we'll just start there. So, for people who aren't familiar with Chris, I would just go back and listen to the last 2 episodes he was on, because he came on when he first quit drinking, and that was episode 59, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And then he came on last year talking about what he learned from 2 years of not drinking. And now here we are on 3 years. Let me ask you some things more related to, like, just being 3 years alcohol free, 3 plus years alcohol free, okay? So what keeps you sober? What keeps you non-drinking?
I think it's that I think that it's also the stick and the carrot. The stick being like, I know going back to drinking where that leads to, I do not want to go there. Just being disheveled. And I could see that being the downhill thrill in a hurry. And then the carrot, it's man, I'm looking forward to more of those, just those every days and just having those euphoric moments.
But and you I think that I always find your journey interesting because you pretty much did it on your own. You didn't Well, I guess you did the alcohol experiment and then you talked with me, but you never did like a group or a quote unquote program, or like you've kind of been doing it on your own and not necessarily having other people to talk to about being alcohol free. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I did it. But I think what really helped too is I had some really good counseling before that, and that and it was look, we went in because the marriage was just done, right? And that counseling, it wasn't even about marriage counseling. It was just like, hey, we need to get you healthy. And so it was that type of counseling and that background that I had. I would not have been so when I said I did it on my own, there was some support there that happened, a couple years before.
Yeah, and then you were able to talk to your wife, Heather,
Mhm.
uh, and talk to me at least. But did you have like do you even have other people like where you live that are non-drinkers or been through this kind of experience?
No, what influences I did have, occasionally, I would hear somebody that I admire and say like, "Oh, I don't drink." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Okay. Like the fella, he has a little just on social media a little bit, just lives up kind of our area of operation here. He lives up north, so he lives northeast Washington, and just like, "Hey, I don't drink anymore." I was like, "Oh." I even wrote him, I was like, "Hey, thanks for saying that. That helped me." I didn't, it was hard for me to realize that there's other people that didn't drink that had really adventurous, like exciting lives. So I would occasionally hear some of those. So that influenced me. And a big part too, Debbie, was having you being a year ahead of me. And I was like, oh, it's like the 4 minute mile, right? It's like for you, you broke the 4 minute mile for me. And I was like, I can just draft right behind her. This is perfect. Yeah. It, again, I was by myself, but not by myself.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think sometimes it just takes one other person that gets it and gets you and what you're going through, like it's that cold drink of water in hell, right? It's just having that connection.
Hmm.
Um, But I just find it I'm just because 'cause I'm so much in this world, and I think that doing this podcast, running these groups, like, that keeps me sober, and sometimes I wonder, gosh, if I didn't have all of this that I created, like, would I still be sober? But then I look at you, like, that's why I like looking at other people who kinda do it in a different way, and, like, you're just rocking it. It's just part of who you are now, and it's not, like, a huge deal.
Yeah, I don't wake up every day going like, "Ah, I don't drink. This is great." It's just, occasionally I do have those moments, but it's becoming less and less part of who I am. You
Yeah,
had a gal on a podcast, she said like, "Well, how do you explain it to people?" It's like, "Well, I used to drink, I enjoyed it, then it became unhealthy, and now I don't drink and I feel much better." Okay,
yeah, and it's just, like, no big deal.
right.
I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. It's just so interesting.
Yeah.
Um Well, what do you still feel the benefits of being alcohol free? Like, what are the good bits still about it?
Oh, yeah. Quite often, and sometimes it's just the small things. Sometimes it's just waking up without a hangover. Sometimes it's just going out and just having clarity to do stuff, and also just the freedom. It's like, oh, I used to be so alcohol used to be such a part of like all my activities and how I planned them, what I would
Yeah.
do, and now they're not there. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not drinking. Or I'll see something like on TV or like they're drinking. It's like I'm glad that's not me.
Yeah, just those little things and the
What?
freedom.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think, like, with the relationships of people you have in your life? Like, would you say which ones have changed the most?
I don't have a lot of relationships in my life, but let's see. The main ones I have, wife and daughter, Heather and Jessa. It's nice to be able to be so authentic. It's like when I'm here, I'm very present. So being authentically present, there's something there. It's like my dogs even know it. They don't know if I'm alcohol free, but I mean the presence part. Like if I'm looking at my phone while I'm getting ready to throw the ball for Hildy, she kind of knows I'm not paying attention to her. I was like, all right, no, I know. I'm just putting on some music real quick here, little girl. And then, and then when I put it in my pocket and I'm just listening to the tunes, and then she sees me seeing her, and then she just goes crazy. She's super into it. And then so I think that for me is like when I actually look into my wife's eyes, I give Jessa a hug, like I really am there versus that. I don't know. When you drink, you kind of get that buzz, the buzz, and then you're like, oh, hey, everybody. It's kind of like now that you're sober or you see that with somebody else, you're like, all right, it does nothing for me. It's like, all right, well, that guy's loose. Okay,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. I feel like your and my relationship has gotten better. Like, we have more deep conversations.
Oh, that's right. We do call each other. Yeah, because I'll hear an interesting conversation that you'll have, and I call you up, like, hey, I was just listening to you.
It's
That's
sweet.
kind of trippy is to hear you do an interview and then call you. Yeah, and you've had some deep ones, man. Especially like when it comes to like the eating. You got into that one and food, parenting, being loved. I mean, those are the issues. Now that we're kind of scratching at different surfaces, I want to keep going on your questions. Let's not get too derailed here, but there's stuff like that within me that still, it's like, whoa. And stuff
Yeah.
that will just come up out of the blue. It's like, dude, I totally forgot about that. Or being a kid and just like, oh yeah, I remember making that vow or that judgment. And now that vow and judgment that I made as a kid, you forgot that you made it, but how that operates still operates in your life, you know?
Mhm. Do you think there's any relationships that have not grown that you thought maybe would have, or
Oh, interesting. I thought it's like, oh, I thought this would be a little bit better. Let's think about that. I don't know. Maybe with dad, because dad and I used to drink together a lot. And I remember that being a red flag one time. We came out of a bar, just a dive bar. God, it seems like just
McCleary's?
yeah, just a piece of shit bar. Like they try to build a fence up. It's like, what is this? I remember there's a really old guy that came in there. Anyway, just I don't want to get sidestepped from the story, but that is one. I remember when I stopped drinking, I would still continue to have a relationship with we do. I mean, we still talk, but it's not as the frequency is a lot less. And I think
Yeah.
part of it is because when I would drink, I would call him. When he would drink, he would call me. And now in the afternoon, I don't call because I'm just like, okay, he'll be drinking, and there's just a different dad. But if I call him in the morning before he goes to the gym or right after the gym, that's kind of like the bandwidth to get dad is perfect. And then we show how much
Yeah.
we care for each other by how we're taking care of our stuff.
Yeah, I gotta say it's been interesting because, yeah, dad became my drinking it was like the way to connect with him.
Yeah.
But since he's been sick, and I guess you haven't really experienced this, but, well, our dad went into the hospital for pneumonia and had a GI bleed that wasn't necessarily related to the pneumonia. He ended up having 16 bleeding ulcers related more to ibuprofen and NSAIDs, but also probably related to drinking. And now he can't drink. Did you know that? That there's a no alcohol
Oh,
for him.
really?
So
Interesting. That'll be
this
interesting to see how because that'll be interesting.
Yeah, because he's a pub regular. But what's been interesting is I've probably been closer to him in these last couple weeks
Hmm.
than since I quit drinking. Um, yeah. That has been my most not difficult relationship, but kinda disappointing relationship, but I think now that he's not drinking and I've been helping him and connecting in a different way, like,
Hmm.
it's been better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good to
but
hear.
he's doing better. He really is, so that's good, and, yeah, I've been bringing him different NA beers, he's been researching them, and so that's kinda been a nice way to bond with dad, because the other way to bond with him was with regular beers, right? And so now I'm trying to introduce him into the NA world.
Oh, I know. I mean, yeah, to hang out with dad. The reason that I did a lot of the stuff that I did do younger was just to hang out with dad, and that involved drinking. And
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I really enjoyed it. That was a red flag when I came out of that bar, out of McCleary's, a dive bar. I stopped and I just looked at him and I was like, Dad, I really like drinking with you. And I was like, oh, God, am I going to be like that old guy that came in there?
Oh,
You
that
know?
was still drinking and spending their time in a pub,
Yeah. Yeah.
a
It's
dive
like,
bar.
God, I don't
Yeah.
want to do this here. And
Yeah.
what other questions have we got?
Okay.
I can feel myself getting sidetracked in a hurry.
Oh, I know,
And
I
I'm
know.
excited.
Okay.
I like these. Yeah.
What's your routine like now versus the early days? So when you first quit drinking, and you were kind of talking about this, like the journaling and the just focusing, like
Hmm.
what was it like in the early days, and do you have a routine now?
Yeah. Yeah. In that earlier days, it was much more focused, which again, I like. It's nice to have a focus where you don't have to worry about anything else. I did enjoy that. It was very regimented. I had one focus that day: do not drink. Pretty easy. And it allowed me to do a lot of stuff. It's like I was at the gym. It's like I should probably be at work. I have my own practice. I have my own hours that I work, and I don't have to punch a clock, which is nice. But it also means you're always working. So if
Mhm.
I'm not working, you're like, oh, should I really be working? But it gave me that like, that's okay. What you're doing, this is the most important thing to be doing. It might be like sitting in the sauna. It's like, no, man, you need this time to get clear and remember why you are doing this. That's the part and the kind of routine that I had that I really enjoyed. And now I'm a little more loosey goosey with my routine, and I still get up in the morning, spend time with Heather, and then head off to work. But it's gotten to be where I'm just now a little more automatic pilot, and that's where I want to turn back to being more intentional about what I'm doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I think what was is nice about those first days, first weeks, months, year, it like you said, like your main focus is being alcohol free. Just don't drink. And in a way, it's a gift for everything else because then it's like, oh, that's enough. Like, isn't that a relief to be like, it's enough? You
Oh
didn't
yeah,
drink
man,
today. That's enough.
you're
And
enough. Yeah.
yeah, like that's just like a relief. It's like
Hmm.
pride there's some pride mixed in there, and then relief, like, "You did a good job today, like, you stayed alcohol free, you're fucking awesome," you know? And that just felt good, and that felt enough, and then as here you are 3 years, I'm 4.5, then it becomes because it's now part of who you are, then you're kinda back into that what is enough right now? You know, what does my day look like right now? What can I be proud of right now? That kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want to just be in Egypt making bricks, right? For the Pharaoh. You want to be doing something meaningful. And that is really difficult, And man, thinking clear and saying, actually knowing what you want and to put that into really clear language is not easy. You think that it would be, right? It's like, well, what do you want? Just tell me and I'll do it for you. Or you do to little kids, like, well, what do you want? What'll make you happy? Whatever it is, I'll do it for you.
Mm,
And it's like that is so difficult. It's so difficult. Me and Heather the other day had to craft an email to tell somebody about carpooling with Jessa, and she's driving, and anyway, we know what we wanted, but it still took me and Heather, two highly functioning adults, healthy, talking with somebody who we have a great relationship with, to communicate what we really wanted, and
mm.
not like soft pedal it, round the edges off of it, but just be very clear. It's so hard to do, to tell ourselves the truth and to actually know ourselves well enough to know what we want and what's good for us. It's like what I was talking about, like with dad. Like there's so many things I did with dad. Now that I'm like, that's just not who I am. I'm not a guy that drinks. That was a big thing. Um, I'm not really even into hunting anymore. I haven't done it for years and years and years. I thought I should get back into doing that. It's like, I don't want to. I was like, I was like, oh, I don't have to. I can
Yeah.
just go hiking.
And I think a lot of those are external things and
Yeah, that's so true.
so much of the things we do externally are kind of to prove our worthiness just for being on the planet. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to go back again and again to like, I don't need to prove myself. I am
No,
enough. I am
no.
worthy. I don't need to have all these titles or have something to show for my day or have, like it can be enough just to go on a walk. Like I don't even have to have a productive hobby. We were talking about um like our hobbies or what are you doing with your time, and especially since so many when you give up drinking, you have a lot more time, but a lot of hobbies are so, um externally outcome based. It's like, "Oh, I need to show something for all this time that I have. Oh, here's a book that I wrote." Like, isn't it enough to
Yeah.
just read a book or go on a walk? Like, you don't have to run a marathon to show like, "Oh, here's what I've been doing. See, I did this
Mhm.
race." It's just coming back again and again to that, like, it's okay to just be. And I think you were alluding that before, like, just being is enough.
Yeah, that's, like, the most important thing, like, entering into, like, the rest, the work is finished, right?
Let me ask you this, because this comes up a lot for people, like, and before we talked about, like, when do you stop thinking about drinking or whatever? And so this question is, when was your last craving
Oh,
for a
last craving?
drink?
Oh, probably a couple days ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
what
get it.
tell us about it.
I get it, man. Was I working outside? It's usually a paired association,
Uh-huh.
doing work and just kinda like, "Ah, you know what to go over great right now?" And sometimes I'll be watching a TV show where they'll be having a beer. I'll even tell Heather, it's like, "I usually don't get a craving, I see that, it's like, yeah, that looks nice." And for me, it's if something needed to be done, I couldn't drink. So I had to get the work done before I could drink, you know? So if I do a task outside and get something done, I'm like, all right, I feel like this would be a great time to drink right now, you know? I mean, nothing's better for me than if I was to go out and just cut up a bunch of firewood, be done, have a beer, just cruising down an old dirt road. You got that smell of saw gas and exhaust and cut wood and pine, and your hands are all, you know, you you're just sweaty mess and just and you got that cold beer. Just cruising down the road. That is a big craving. So something that gets close to that association, working here around the house where I'm working on something outside and I get all done, it's like, "Oh, this would be a great time
And
for a
what do you
beer."
do? Like, how do you get over that craving? Like, what happens? Because you
Um,
don't drink.
Now I've had this practice happen so much, I know it. I almost like I almost kinda shake hands with it. I almost,
Mm.
like, I almost, like, wrestle with it. It's like, "You wanna go? Let's do it." And I just kinda feel it kinda getting in there. I feel its hooks in me, and I'm just like, I'm just drawing you in, and then boom, I got you in the arm bar. You're going down. And and sometimes I'll have another drink with it, with, like, a kombucha. I don't do the alcohol-free beer anymore because it's too close. I mean, that's just, it's just for me, it's too close, but kombucha is not too close. And I wait it out. I wait it out, and then that feeling just kinda taps out, and I was like, "Okay, I beat
Mhm.
you. I beat you again. You couldn't get me. Okay. Alright, I'll just try it next time." I'm not saying I welcome that because I don't purposely tempt myself, but when it does come, quitting is a skill, and now that I've done it enough, I'm much more skilled at it. So I look at it when it comes my way, and it's like, "Okay, here's another opportunity to wrestle with it and win." And then when it goes away, you're like, "I knew it." Y I have so much confidence now that it'll pass because it's always happened. But in those earlier times, you're like, "It'll never pass. It'll never
Mhm.
go away." And it's not about willpower. It's just you're almost powerless. But now, as you experience that skill, it's almost second nature to sit with that feeling a little bit and also ask like, why is this coming on? And a lot of times just because I'm missing something. It's like I miss those good days. I miss those good memories, or what have you. It's a good topper. It gives that extra little. I'm already feeling good, and it's like you want to feel even better.
Mm.
Get that extra little
Yeah.
hitter in there, that's a little kick. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that is so true. It's a skill to sit with any emotion. Well, especially the
Mhm.
negative, quote unquote,
Oh,
negative emotions. That is a
yeah.
skill. And then that knowledge that this too shall pass, no feeling is final. And
Mhm.
you've learned, and it's a learning thing. That's why I think of like alcohol, and you learn to drink and you learn to be alcohol free.
Yeah.
And that's a process. Um, what about with, like, stress or other things you used to drink at? How do you handle when you have stress in your life now, or you're at work, or the anxiety? How do you handle those kinds of
Yeah, I still get
emotions?
stressed, and sometimes it's stress over the smallest thing, and I realize, like, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're weak, that just means that's just how your body's just this is how your body is reacting to this. And sometimes it's just a little trigger. You know, sometimes when you jump across a little curb or a spring, I've used this example a lot, and you sprain your ankle, and you're like, I wasn't doing anything major. I just sprained my ankle. I wasn't even like trying to do anything. I've done it 1,000 times. Sometimes that will happen with stress. In
Mhm.
my world, doing taxes or what have you. It's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, why am I feeling this? And I'll realize a lot of times that feeling that I get is tied back to some agreement that I made when I was a kid. You know, I remember dad telling me, he's like, you can make one mistake and it'll ruin your life. You know, anyway, so getting away from the what caused the stress, but the one thing that really helps me deal with the stress is that I realize it happens to everybody. It still happens to me. And it's not because I'm a failure, or I'm weak, or I'm in over my head, over my skis, doing something wrong here, but it is a signal. So I look at that signal and I kind of ask myself, okay, why did this come up? Okay, I may think upon that, maybe jot something down about that. All right, now that had a physical response in my body. There, I can almost feel it going down my arms. I need to get that out of me. And the way that I get that out of me is just I need to exercise, right?
Yeah,
And so
like
for
you need
me,
to
it's
move
getting
your
my heart
body.
rate. I need to get up. I need to move my body, and for me, that helps clear out a lot of that junk. It just okay. Here's what happened. It left a physical mark on you. Uh, you did a little thinking on it, like why did this happen? Then you took care of it, and then now you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that getting out of your head and into your body is so helpful, whatever that looks like. And
Hmm.
even maybe it's just shaking it off, maybe it's cold water on your face, if you don't have time to do like a walk or whatever, or jumping jacks
Yeah.
or whatever. Um, yeah. And I think the other thing too is just like keeping, I heard this analogy from a mindfulness instructor, and it was that we are always going to have stress. Stress is just life, right? And so you think of yourself being out in the water, and the water is stress. And so if you can keep your water level, your stress level down at a manageable place, then when those waves come, they're not going to take you out. Like you said, those little things that you do over and over again, sometimes they take you out. And so if your stress level has gotten to a point where you're up to your chin, maybe you're dog paddling, just surviving, a little wave comes and it's going to take you out. So it's doing like
Oh,
those proactive,
that's right.
preventative things to keep the
Yeah.
stress,
Mhm.
keep the water
Yeah.
level down.
Gosh, I know. Like, even a teaspoon of water, salt water up your nose? I mean,
Yeah,
dude, that'll
right.
cheer you up.
Right. But
And
that
it's
might
just like,
go back to the, like, the having a routine, regularly exercising, doing mindfulness, having someone to talk to, connections,
mhm.
creativity, whatever that looks like, just to keep the water level at a manageable, uh, level.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that helps me too, it's like when I work, so like, a lot of times the stuff is associated with work. I take due care in everything that I do. That way, if something does happen down the road, there's going to be a certain level of error. You're going to have a non-zero error rate. You're going to make a mistake, but then I feel like, okay, if something comes up and I catch a mistake, or the client catches a mistake, or something happens, it's like, oh, that wasn't because I was just screwing off, pencil whipping stuff, or just lying to myself about what I'm doing. That's just natural. That's going to happen. And then you know what you do? You just fix it.
Yeah,
That,
and you learn
that's
from it.
exactly. Yeah, I've done that. I mean, sometimes they're big mistakes, sometimes they're small. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just the world we live in. And then telling yourself the truth.
Yeah.
Being really good at telling yourself the truth. Yeah.
Mm,
What else we got?
yeah.
I know we had a couple more. I looked at them over. You got
Okay,
a couple more questions?
what are you most proud of in the last 3 years?
That one coming up. Most proud of in the last 3 years.
Or maybe some of what you're most proud of?
I was gonna say, I think it's gonna be just the consistency, but then there's that part where we have to tell ourselves the truth. I haven't been that consistent here, especially towards the end. B- But always leaning, but I've always got the leaning. I'm leaning into doing better. And that's probably what I'm most proud of. It's like I'm still leaning in to do better. I'm still leaning in to do more. I'm still leaning in to improve my surroundings. I'm still leaning in to get my practice running better. I'm still leaning into wanting to learn new stuff. I'm still leaning in to improving versus like, okay, whatever. Apathy will just destroy you, man. You'll rust out before you wear out, right? And so I've been really doing that on purpose, that lean. So it's kind of like, okay, I've got a good lean.
Oh, I love that. That actually kind of reminds me of um there's a Brene Brown quote about like wholehearted living and walking. I gotta find that. Oh, it's the wholehearted living. So she says wholehearted living is not like trying to reach a destination. It's like walking toward a star in the sky. We never really arrive, but we certainly know that we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's leaning in. Oh. Um, well, do you have questions for me besides what's for dinner?
Oh, I did put that in my thing. Hey, what's for dinner? I was like, how much of our life is focused on that? It's like, what are we eating today? You know? Ah, um, gosh, we were talking before we hit record here. And one of the things that I wrote down in preparation for our meeting was on this the whiteboard that I got here in the office. And it was nothing you will ever do will be as meaningful as quitting alcohol. And sometimes we don't say those words specifically, but when you hear people talk about their sobriety, their journey, it's often couched in those terms. So it can be because it is a big deal. And it's like, this is a major milestone in my life. It was a turning point in my life. I think what I started to do is that I started saying, like, that was a high point in my life. I'm not sure what else is going to come after that. And you look back on it, you're like, okay. And then you're left with another year. You're like, okay, but that's not that far behind. You start getting year three and you're like, I still have more to do. And I'm still a little bit, I have issues. I need therapy, man. I still need to work on myself. I, I've got issues. Uh, but I have a lot more clarity. I was curious about your response to that statement that you go through a sober high point in your life and you look back on it, do you measure that as the highest point in your life? Should we even do that? Should we rank our experiences?
I think that's so interesting. So it was nothing you will ever do will be as meaningful as quitting alcohol.
Mhm.
I don't, and I think that I would take off the nothing you will ever do. I think I kind of rephrase it differently, as in quitting alcohol is one of the most meaningful things I've ever done, but not
Yeah.
nothing, but I get
Right.
what you're saying, like, it's kinda like BA and AA before alcohol and after alcohol, and it is kinda this measurement line in your life, like, "Wow, my life before I quit drinking and my life after I quit drinking," but I don't know that it's like a mountain you got to and now it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, and I think what happens, you know what prompted that was I was listening to a fella talk about those who get out of the military and do go on to do really good, have a business, do leadership, and they use their experiences that they learned while in the military, going forward. And I guess there's some of the community that would say like, "Hey, you really you kind of sold out. You really shouldn't be doing that." And they kind of beat each other up. And it's not my world, so I wasn't aware that this was happening. But the fella, Chad, who was talking, he goes, when you're in the military, he goes, they will often tell you that this is the most important thing that you're going to do is what you do here in the military. Nothing will compare to this. And it's something that's just the message that they got. And I think that I was also telling myself that message, especially in year one. There is nothing more important than I need to do right now than to focus on me becoming alcohol free. Okay, so we rung that bell. And now we get past that. And then you're right. I think we do need to change that mindset and how we looked at that and what we told ourselves. That was the most important thing that you could have done right then at that time. But now going forward, there's other things to work on within you and your being. And that's what you need to work on is now you are being, living, um, experiencing life. I had a little bit of a follow up with that. And I thought, you know what? For me, I'm really trying to take stock in that every day is special. Every day is a real world operation. You can live or die this day. There's not, I mean, and as soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, but mom, some of these days just suck. Mama
True.
said, I was wondering how you would respond to that.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking about the messaging. And I think what a lot of people some people feel like the messaging is, and I'm probably guilty of this with my own messaging. Like, if once you remove alcohol, everything in your life will get better and easier and brighter. And some people don't have that experience because you're still, life is life, right? And you still are in the same job, the same family, the same relationships. And so for some people, they remove alcohol and they're like, wow, I don't feel amazing. I don't feel like what other people are talking about. Not everyone has the same experience once they remove alcohol. And so I think what you're saying too is, okay, the messaging, and then now you've reached moved the alcohol, but there's still stuff to work on. I mean, earlier you said you have issues. What are your issues? What do you mean by
My
that?
issues? Well, I've got a list, sister.
Okay.
And I think it's so easy I have a propensity to want to focus on something, you know? And sometimes it could be super ridiculous. I remember I was going to buy a toothbrush, a sonic toothbrush, and I went so deep into the research on it. I was even interviewing people in the office. How do you brush your teeth? Do you have a sonic toothbrush? What do you think of it? Do you regret buying it? And Ben, we still work together. We started our careers together, and we still work together. And he still brings that up. And he goes, Chris, I still remember the toothbrush. You literally interviewed me about a toothbrush. So it's easy for me to get off task and focus on something that's trivial and not important, but it's a way that I procrastinate, and that I'm using procrastination to sidestep inner anxiety. I would imagine that's what's going on. And then I'll tell myself this is actually really important. And so what I've been focusing on lately is all doom scroll. I was like, did Russia are we in nuclear war yet? Because if we are, then the hell with this paperwork. You know, I'm stepping away from it. I don't need to plan. I don't need to be future oriented. And what else will I do? Oh, and then I'll tell myself if I'm scrolling on Facebook Marketplace, it's like it's important for me to know what prices are out there for snow blowers and old pickup trucks. It's really important. Or Heather was in here in the office, and she goes, all the research that you do looking at old pickups and motorcycles, you could put that effort into like looking for a place that we could go hiking. And I was like, damn woman, you're right. I'm spending a lot of time doing this. It's difficult for me to honestly answer the question of why. And I think that I'm also having a hard problem. I thought I would be able to think clearer once I removed the alcohol. And what I've noticed is that my internal measures, my diagnostic measures, like my internal levels, my bubbles, they're now operating okay. I don't have to worry about them being clouded by alcohol. It's like, no, if you're feeling anxiety, it's not from the alcohol because you don't have alcohol in your life. It's because you're dealing with other things internally within yourself. So if you're off balance, there is a reason. And now you really need to look at why that reason exists, and you need to deal with it. And I keep putting that off. And that's what I really want to go forward and work on, is delving deeper into those deeper wells that are in myself and digging those out and getting that fresh flow going again. That's what I'm going forward
Yeah,
now
and
and
how do you
realizing.
go about that? What are you gonna do?
Oh, I'm glad you asked because I figured it all out.
Awesome. Let's hear
Just,
it.
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I was telling Heather, I was like, I had the when I was doing really good, it's because I was getting up and I was using my little panda planner, planning my day, using my journal, and then I would put a little. I'd work on like a memory verse, a little scripture, being kind of focused. And Heather's like, Chris, it's not about systems. Those things are good, but there's something there's something else going on within you. And you need to go talk, you need to go figure this out. You need to talk with somebody. I need therapy. And so what I need to do is really work with another. I, we need people. We can't do this all we cannot do life all by ourselves. But in a way, it's all up to us.
Mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to that next step, is like, okay, I need to go out and get some. For some people, some counts, I don't know what's going to look like, but really, I need help focusing my gaze. We all want to focus on something. And then for me, I have that. kind of spiritual background, my belief structure. And so for me, the most important thing that I really need to focus on is that spiritual aspect of my life. And that means I just need to look, you know, this sounds so cliche. I need to look to my Lord and Savior.
Well, that's
You
important
know,
to you.
and that's important to me. And some people are like, ah, God, I don't want to do that. And like that's okay. You don't have to. Um, and that's going to be up to you. And I get it where people would kick at that, especially people who have had bad experiences with quote unquote religion. But for me, that's a guy you're gonna focus on something in life, whether you're a believer, in the Trinity, or you're not. You're going to you are built to focus on something. That what are you going to focus on? And that's what I need help with, I think.
Well, this, some of what you're saying kind of makes sense to me because you alluded to the living life like, you didn't say one day at a time, but not knowing what the future holds, being uncertain. And then when you had the goal, like you were really attached to the outcome and a goal and something measurable. And now that you've done that something, it's and I think that's why having specific goals is so helpful for people, and now you're just kinda out there in the ether, just kinda floating around and trying to find something to anchor yourself to as you move forward, as you're like uncovering, like, oh, okay, what are my feelings really? Maybe I really do have anxiety. It's not just related to the alcohol. I removed that. Maybe it's something else. And, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want to learn more about? And for you, it's like spirituality and the role of God and Jesus in your life.
Yeah, that and really appreciating even the small things in life that
Absolutely. Yeah.
we're we've had some deferred maintenance on the house and in the yard and whatnot, and part of it's just like, ugh, I just don't want to do this. This is a pain. But there's another part of me. It's kind of like, it's kind of nice putting my hands to some work and seeing something out there. I think that's also why it's so important for us to be involved in something meaningful with our hands. Um, it even could be creative writing. I guess the creative process. And for me, the creative process involves my hands. For others out there, you might want to paint, uh, write, um, something. And I think that is evidence of you manifesting something. And then if it's really great, it can transcend. And I think that's what makes really, really good art when you look at something and you're like, why am I staring at this painting for like an hour? And I think it's because there is something done with such meaning and feeling and craftsmanship by another human being that you can look at it, appreciate, and there's something that happens in that is with good art that transcends you. You're almost communicating with that person on a spiritual level. And I think that's what happens as a shortcut when we use alcohol and other chemicals and drugs. Have you ever heard that like people who are like tripping out on drugs? I never did hard drugs, but that you are experiencing something with everybody else that has done that drug. That there's some sort of that's what I've heard and I thought that somewhat makes sense to me. And I think when I was drinking, I almost had that feeling. I was like, "Hey, man, are you feeling this too?" Yeah, and there's some sort of a connectiveness there,
Mm. Yeah.
and that is within us. And I think the meaningful way to get there is through like doing meaningful work. And that meaningful work could also be creative artwork. That's not wasted.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, I think it's interesting what you're talking about too, like the whole interconnectedness and whatnot. I sometimes think of us, this is just an aside, but like having these network, you know how like mushrooms have networks in the earth and they're all connected to each other? I
Oh,
think people are kind of like
100%.
that,
Oh, yeah, the secret life of trees, man.
right? All the roots and yeah,
Yeah, but they deal with the fungus also that's in there.
yeah, it's amazing. Okay.
What about you? Do you still plan on going forward with your coaching that you're doing here, helping others? We talked a
Well,
little bit about this the other day. You got daughters, they're getting close. One's really close to graduating. So
yeah,
we're 3 years
yes.
out to having no more high
Ugh.
schoolers.
3 years,
Your
wow.
youngest, what grade is she in? 10th?
She'll be in 10th grade, so she's gonna be 15.
Yeah.
She'll be a sophomore, Mirabelle will be a senior, so I would say, like, my focus is really in these next 3 years to really be present, be there for them, help
Mhm.
them, get them
Yeah.
launched out of the nest, um, and then, like, alcohol tipping point, this brings me so much meaning. And I think sometimes when I'm like, well, maybe I'm done talking about drinking, which is true freedom, right? Where it's like, gosh, I don't like think about this. I don't, it's just part of who I am. I'm just a non drinker and it's not as big of a deal as it was in the beginning. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm done talking about drinking, you know? Maybe I'll hang up my hat. Like I feel like, I've helped some people, and that feels really good, and going back to, like, and that's enough. But then I still have people who reach out, and they need help, and I will keep doing it until people stop needing help, and as long as people are out there and needing help, like, I wanna be able to help them.
Yeah. So you're not gonna be retiring anytime soon?
Such a great gig, and I'm getting
Yeah.
to where I'm enjoying more, like, the freedom that I have. At first, I
Mhm.
felt really untethered without my 9 to 5 job, quote, unquote. I mean, I'm still working very part-time as a nurse for the health screenings and
Yeah.
lab review and whatnot, but this is good for me right now and for the kids situation and being home, but being flexible, so it's great, and it's still providing meaning, I hope. Like, if it's not anymore, then I'll know, like, "Okay, it's time to move on." But hopefully it's helping people. But let
Mhm.
me end on where I just always love to hear from you, what you would say to someone who's listening to this and they're like, "Wow, 3 years. Chris did it, Deb did it, maybe I can do it." Maybe they're
Mhm.
listening and they're
Yeah.
struggling. What would you
Yeah.
say?
Hey, man, struggle's real, and we've been through it, and yeah, that you can do it. You can. I'm telling you that you can. And it may not look it won't look. It's not gonna look like your journey exactly. It won't look exactly like mine. You're not gonna be, "Hey, if you can just sit in the sauna and get sober, I mean, I'm happy for you." There's a lot of other things went along with that too, and you're worth it. That's the other thing, is that you're worth it. I think that was something that really helped me too, is it's to when I heard somebody say, "Hey, you cannot get sober for anybody else, as important as your family is and all that, you cannot do that. It has to be for you and you alone, and that it is just really tuck in under that you really are worth it." Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
just echo what you said and remind people that you're not alone, that that there are people out here doing this either
Mhm.
beside you or with you, And if you need help, to reach out and know that there's so many ways to change your drinking. And
Yeah.
thank God for that. And it's just becoming more and more normalized that people are just giving up alcohol because it's
Yeah, and you can have a lot of day ones.
right.
I hear a lot of frustration, people like, "Oh, I'm at another day one again." It's like, "Hey, man, quitting is a skill."
Absolutely. It's the
Yeah.
keep going, keep learning and
Yeah, just keep leaning
persevering.
in on that. Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah. And don't you think you needed all those kinda day ones and breaks to get to where you are now?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I told them that the first episode doing that, like, a 30-day challenge was a big deal, and then I ended up in the hospital. Anyway, but yeah, those ha-ha moments of like, "Whoa," when you're trying to quit, you're like, "I didn't realize how deep this went." 'Cause, there's a lot of us that are kind of like us, right? Of high functioning, we drink, we have parents that drink, our friends drink, we always drink. It's just what we do. We don't really think we drink a lot, but actually we kinda do. And you just don't know how deep that alcohol has gotten into you in everything that you do, how you think, your subroutines, your heart, not just your physical heart here I'm talking, but just like your deep spiritual, emotional heart. It had that slow seep down, down, down. And then so when you start that journey, you're like, hey, this will be great. Kind of like the Lord of the Rings journey, like, okay, here we go. Do, 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 do. And then you're in the mines of you're like, oh my God, we're in the mines here and there's demons down here. And this is way deeper than I thought. Like way deeper, man. It's like, yeah, there's some gnarly shit down there, dude. But you clean that out, and you're also like, there's hidden wells in here that you just trust me. There's buried people say buried treasure. I was like, okay, but to me, uncovering wells resonates with me much more. There's deep water in there that you can get to.
Mm.
And then you kind
Yeah.
of start having those little epiphanies like, okay,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love you.
I love you, man. And your hair, your glasses.
Same to you with your headband and your hair.
Oh, that's right. We didn't tell people
Rock
can't see me, but
on.
I'm growing my hair out. And people ask me, how long are you going to grow your hair out? And I was like, you ever heard of Jesus? I even
Okay.
use that as I don't proselytize. I mean, people talk to me and ask me about spiritual stuff. I'll talk to them, but it's not like I'm not
Yeah.
there to vacuum their floors just to get in the conversation with them about Jesus. But when they do talk about my hair, it's like, because I'm a CPA.
Yeah, but
And
you're
some
your
clients
own
have,
private CPA. You can do
I'm a
whatever you
private,
want.
yeah, I don't even have a 1099. I got my own. I mean, I have an 1120 SK1, buddy.
Okay,
Anything I
you have
want
to
to
send
do.
me a picture.
I'll send you a picture. Yeah, it's getting there, man.
I need a picture
So
for my
Justin and
my
Heather wanted me to grow it out so I can have long hair to bring it all into one big ponytail. Kind of like, that.
okay. It's a little Karate Kid, a little 80s.
Oh, dude, I'm 100% to the 80s, right? Hell
Okay,
yeah.
you have to send me a picture with your hair
Okay, I'll do it.
and and the headband maybe.
In the headband? Yeah, I have a
That's
whole
going
bunch of
on the
these.
cover art. What's going on your next album?
Come on, album. Album.
Uh, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you. I love that we do this and connect and can keep it up every year.
Yeah,
Keep on going, brother.
brother. Yeah, you too, sister. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. Please share and review the show so you can help other people too. I want you to know I'm always here for you, so please reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com, for free resources and help. No matter where you are on your drinking journey, I want to encourage you to just keep practicing, keep going. I promise you are not alone and you are worth it. Every day you practice not drinking is a day you can learn from. I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week, and until then, talk to you next time.